I can't do this. How did you do? When did you get that?
Moses wrote the Pentateuch.
Oh my god! Is that the guy with
Egyptian
amazing?
loanwords.
Is that the guy with amazing breasts? I'm pretty sure that's the guy with amazing breasts.
Yeah, you got it.
Welcome everyone to Deep Drinks Podcast. That was unexpected. I did not know that was coming. When did you cut out that and decide to do that?
I know. It's been a little while. I've used it a couple of times. You know what? It was such a. My wife thought it was so hilarious that she had me then print out a picture of one of her work colleagues and make a sign for her when she teaches classes online. So it's
I,
it's
so we don't
pretty
normally we don't normally pick on random people, but he threw some hands first at Dr. Francesca Pulo. So Professor Francesca Stavrakopoulos, and so
that's okay.
But
he's gone.
Yeah, so what? So just I didn't understand. And before we can I'm screwing up this whole intro. But before, is he like a Christian scholar, like an apologist almost? Because I thought he was like a secular scholar,
That's what I thought when I first saw him too. Right, the first video I ever saw was his review of Michael Jones's Exodus documentary, and he introduced himself as an Egyptologist, and I thought it was funny, right? In part because he was making fun of Michael Jones, which is always funny. I hope Michael's watching.
No, I love Michael. Michael's.
I know. I like Michael.
Michael's my buddy, but he gets so much hate from both sides. By the way, he's in the middle, like, what do I do? Yeah.
So, but that's what I thought initially at first too. But then after a while, he was saying, like, when I would turn on stuff that he did, I'm like, what? So no, he is a dyed in the wool Christian apologist. He went to TEDS, which is Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, which is like a super conservative evangelical seminary. Anyways, we're here for other stuff, right?
But yes, we are. But I want to hear. I want to hear about. I want to do show and tell first, because the reason we started like a couple minutes late is because Kip's just like, have you seen this? And I was like, so like I don't. But
right.
Before we do that, what are we drinking?
Well, I have this. I've got one of those. I have a tall glass of water, but I have.
Oh, yours is much
fuller.
Mine is from our last episode.
See, mine is not.
Yeah.
Mine was. This was my Christmas present from my oldest son. He gets me the same thing every year, and that's fine. He can just keep doing that. So we're drinking Nika from the barrel, which is a very, very fine single malt. I believe it's a blend, actually. I think it's a blend.
It's a whiskey blend. It's a blend, but it's 51%, so it's pretty
so good.
Pretty gutsy. It puts up a fight.
Like that's probably gonna knock me out before the.
But it's a great and I actually we're doing this at like 1 p.m. and I got up really early. I stayed up late last night, and so I don't have to work after this, so I can indulge a bit more than I normally would. So before we jump into the case for Christ, and we put forward the case for critical scholarship, let's do show and tell. What have you brought today?
Yeah. So because I just assumed you had seen it, because I've been showing pictures of this all over the internet. So you and I have a mutual friend by the name of Captain Dadpool. I don't think he's here this evening. He said he might pop in if he managed to stay awake, but it's pretty late on the East Coast for a dad with piles of little little kids in his house. But our friend Captain Dadpool, way back in, it was like October or November, said to me, he said, I make knives. Can I make one for you? And I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. And then he showed me, he filmed some super cool video of him taking like the knife out of the forge, and it's like on fire, like it's blazing with fire, and he sticks it in the water. It was super cool. He sent me videos of making it, right? I was like, wow, that's neat. And then he asked me shortly before Christmas, he's like, what's your favorite manuscript from the Dead Sea Scrolls? And so I told him there's, this manuscript of the War Scroll called 4Q491. I've done a bunch of work on it. He's like, okay, cool. And then he shipped this knife to me, and it took forever to get here to Canada. But then I think it was like the second or third week of January, I got a notice from the post office that it had arrived, and a customs bill to go with it, which I did not for a second mind paying, as you will soon see. And I opened it up, and first of all, I'll show you, because Ricky, Captain Dadpool also made me this lovely custom stand for my knife, and this is it.
Whoa.
How awesome is that?
That is so awesome.
So I'm gonna zoom in here on the handle. I don't know if you can see it very clearly, but
Is that script?
It's Hebrew script.
Whoa.
So it's actually script from the War Scroll, from 4Q491, that he embedded into the handle. There.
That is so cool.
Oh yeah. So he told me it's made out of, I don't know, he made it out of this super high grade steel. He said you can beat the hell out of it. You will barely ever have to sharpen it. He said, but it does, yeah, it will rust pretty quickly, so I have to keep it clean and dry. But I've been using this like every day. It's my new kitchen knife.
Yeah, that's
pretty
so
sweet, eh?
that is so awesome.
So
that's so cool.
And then there's one more part of the story that I'm pretty sure Captain Dadpool won't mind my sharing. So my friend, our mutual friend, Dr. Dan McClellan, when he saw the knife that I was posting all over the place, he was like, "Wow, that's amazing!" And so he asked me a little bit more about it. I told him, where it came from. So he actually reached out to Captain Dadpool and has now, commissioned him to make a knife for a good friend of his. One of Dan gravitates in circles that I can only dream of. But so one of his very good friends is Joe McHale from Community. So he's commissioned Captain Dadpool to make a knife for him.
No way. That is so cool.
I know,
That is
right?
so cool.
So
I
will, because I'm never shy about taking credit. I'll take some credit for that as well. So
that is really cool. That's and Captain Dadpool's actually coming on this channel. We're discussing it this morning. He's coming back on. We're going to be discussing the Trinity. This is going to be fun.
Oh,
yeah, because
nice.
I never saw it as a problem, but I see a lot of people arguing about it. I'm like, why are people arguing about it? And then I asked Captain Dadpool and Ricky, and he gave me a big explainer, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. So yeah, we're going to dive into it. But but just before we start, again, I've said this a couple of times now, but I forgot to mention this to you. We talk a lot privately, like when we're having a bubble bath, we'll video each other or whatever. No, but I was talking to a family member, and they were talking to a member of the first punk band, the first commercial punk band in Australia, and the conversation somehow got onto the Dead Sea Scrolls. I have no idea why, right?
Wow.
And
it's very punk. The Scrolls are punk, man.
They are. And I said, and they said, oh, turns out the Dead Sea Scrolls. So this is the person telling me this, that the band member told them this, that turns out the Dead Sea Scrolls are fake or they're fraudulent. And I lost my mind. I was like, I can't believe, because I think what's happened is the person has seen your work and the work you did in the documentary, and then it blew my mind because I was like, that's the guy I was just telling you about. No, that's Kip. That's the guy on my podcast. I was like, oh my, and it was such a weird meeting of worlds that I was like, yeah, this is what I've been talking about this whole time. It's like, it's not the whole Dead Sea Scrolls. It's like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction on this antiquities market. But yeah, it opened the door to a really interesting conversation.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome, man. So, but that is something I find I now have to clarify quite a bit. People, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of authentic Dead Sea Scrolls, the ones that were discovered between 1947 and 53. Those are all real. It's just this select few, which is actually, I mean, it's like 80 fragments that came onto, and antiquities markets, close to 2002 and then thereafter. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat, and Shannon Q is disparaging my hockey tastes.
I messaged Shannon Q the other day, and I hope this is okay to mention Shannon, but I messaged her the other day and was like, I just got a Coke from McDonald's, and I was like, I don't want to just drink Coke by itself. I was like, I'm going to put some rum in it. And then as soon as I did that, I was like, that reminds me of Shannon Q. And I sent her a voice message. I'm like, I don't know if that's an insult or a compliment, but the last time I think I drank rum was with Shannon Q on Deep Drink. So it's been a while. So
Nice.
yeah.
So Shannon Q and I don't agree about much. I don't actually know. We probably agree about a lot of things. But one thing that we are absolutely united in, and I hope we are absolutely united in this, and that is that the Edmonton Oilers fucking suck. So, it's probably too early to say that, isn't it?
God no, it's not. It's worth 30 minutes in.
Now it's
shit. Fuck. That's all good. It's all good.
Okay. So the Edmonton Oilers, everyone, they fucking suck.
Well, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Over here in Kangaroo Land, we don't even have ice hockey. I don't think we might. It's very small because we don't have any ice hockey rinks. But let's jump into it. So, Kip, for those who don't know who you are, you're a Hebrew Bible scholar, a philologist. Yep. I hope I said that right. Dead Sea Scrolls expert. Yeah. Cool. And you're an expert in ancient scribal practices. You have a PhD in religion and theology from Manchester University, and you're on the team
University of Manchester.
University of Manchester, sorry. And you had uncovered the forgeries in the Dead Sea Scrolls antiquity market. Have I been saying that wrong the whole time? Anyway.
I don't know. I haven't noticed, but I probably didn't and was super polite. But now, I'm done being polite.
Yeah, great. I hope we're past the that stage, and we can be rude to each other. But so good. So let's do a recap of the first two episodes. So this isn't the first episode in the series. We actually did 2 episodes way back, 7 months ago, where we were like, let's open like an old apologetics book and discover what gems
inside
are inside. And we found a lot of coal. But we've been going through it chapter by chapter, and they've been really interesting because it opens the door for a larger exploration of the ancient Near East, of Israel, of the time of Jesus, Palestine, all that kind of stuff. So let's do a recap of the first 2 episodes. So the first episode was, can the biographies of Jesus be trusted?
Yes, that was the first episode.
And we discovered.
And absolutely. They're like newspapers. It's just, it's the difference between like the New York Times and the New York Post. It's just no, of course not. No, these we know, we've discovered that that these are not proper biographies. These are theological works, and they were written, long after the life of Jesus, and they don't actually have any interest in excuse me, they don't actually have any interest in history.
Mhm.
The Gospels are much more concerned about painting a picture of Jesus that's going to be useful and meaningful, and provide depth to the readers. As something else, they're not even independent either. One of the
Mm.
things that we know for a fact is that Mark was the first gospel written, and then Luke and Matthew basically just rewrote Mark. So, in fact, a friend of mine, Camille Greger, who does some work. He's a classicist, and he does a little bit of work. He dabbles in New Testament. He's written a few pretty good papers. Something that he's talking about quite a bit more recently is making the case that both Matthew and Luke are actually recensions of Mark. So they're basically this. It's the same. It's the same story, basically.
Mm.
Just, massaged, developed, um abridged, and expanded in various places and to various ends. So yeah, no, the Gospels cannot be trusted uh as biographies or as historical writings. I'll say one other thing about that, though, that I do think that a careful eye can tease out a couple of features of potential historical realities from the
Mm.
Gospels.
Mm.
But that's a lot more work, and it's not the sort of thing that just you're going to be able to do just through a casual read.
And of course, we go much further into this on the other two episodes. But one thing we kind of discovered was, not discovered, we talked about, was the Gospels are anonymous. We don't know who wrote them. The names Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were attributed to them way later. You said there is a 0% chance that the disciples Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were the ones who wrote them. You said absolutely not possible.
I think so.
And that they were written in Greek. Jesus spoke in Aramaic, and something that Dr. Matthew Monger pointed out was is that if I was to go over to Norway and I was to sit in a church with him and he was to translate for me, he wouldn't be translating, he'd be interpreting. He'd be saying, well, they're saying basically this, and he's whispering in my ear in English what they're saying in Norwegian. And that would be the case of what would be happening, translating something that Jesus was saying in Aramaic into Greek, and then we've taken that Greek, translating into English, and our earliest manuscripts are like a couple of hundred years later, when you get full manuscripts out, we get small little fragments and stuff that we went over.
Yeah.
But I have a quick question about
so before you ask your question, let's get real here, David. If you were in a church with Matt Monger, he wouldn't be translating or interpreting anything. He'd be drinking this fine, smooth Japanese whiskey.
Does he like Japanese whiskey?
The very first time that he and I had this stuff was at a whiskey bar in Oslo together.
Oh, so, right. You think you told us that story?
I think I might have mentioned that. Yeah.
Anyways, but my question was, do we know where the Gospels were written?
Not Judea.
Okay.
So they were written not in Palestine or Judea. Most likely Rome. But there's various ideas about where they come from, but scholars are by and large agreed that they did not come from Palestine. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, and the second episode we looked at, and I guess this we'll go through the criteria, but we're looking at the criteria for testing the eyewitness evidence. Do the biographies, I love how he uses the word biographies. We've already determined they're not biographies, but do the biographies of Jesus stand up to scrutiny? And just something I want to say that I forgot to mention that I didn't mention before was just because they don't meet the criteria for a biography and therefore can't be trusted as a biography doesn't mean it didn't happen. But then you're moving into a realm of faith, not history. You're having to rely on your personal internal emotions, not history. So yeah,
very true.
Which is fine. Do whatever you want, but here we're talking about the scholarship and the history. So episode 2, testing the eyewitness evidence.
Yeah. So maybe setting this up a little bit, like what Lee Strobel's book purports to be. Lee Strobel was a journalist with the Chicago Tribune, who became a Christian and a pastor of a large church in the Chicago area, and he wrote this book where he basically takes his journalistic instincts and expertise and attempts to test the gospel story of Jesus in an effort to see if he can determine whether or not it's authentic or true. So in chapter 2, he lays out these 8 criteria that are used to determine historicity and facticity in the Gospels, and we spent like a whole episode basically going over what these are. So I'm not going to rehash the whole thing. I'll just mention them here. The first is the intention test, where he asks the question if they were crafted narratives, and or if they were just historical reports of what had actually happened. Of course, they're crafted narratives. The second was the ability tests, and the ability test was, were the people who purport to be eyewitnesses of Jesus, were they capable of even writing the Gospels? And of course, no, they were not. They were Aramaic speaking, low level peasants, or they were of a lower social standing, which wouldn't have afforded them opportunity to learn how to read and write. Certainly not read and write Greek, maybe some Aramaic or some Hebrew, but almost certainly not Greek, and definitely not both. The third was the character test. Were these people of great integrity who wrote these Gospels? I mean, how would we even know? It's such a stupid question. The consistency test. This is there too much consistency or too much inconsistency between these 4 Gospels, which eliminate the possibility that they're ahistorical. And of course, Strobel comes out on the porridge isn't too hot, it's not too cold, it's just right. There's just enough consistency, but also an expected amount of inconsistency that you would see in any sort of historical reportage, right? So, fifth is the bias test. So the bias test basically says that asks the question of whether the authors of the Gospels were invested, whether they had an agenda or something, at work, which was leading their conclusions. They absolutely did. The sixth is the cover-up test. What is the cover-up test? Oh, this is basically the cover-up test is basically the criterion of embarrassment, which states that there's embarrassing details in the gospel that if these were invented, nobody would invent these embarrassing or unexpected situations. So obviously this must have happened. 7 is the corroboration test, and I have no idea what this is because in my notes all I have is
yeah, that's right. You sent me that. That's right.
I don't even know what that is, people.
We went over it in the last episode. I remember.
It's not good, though. I don't think it's good.
No.
And then finally, the adverse witness test. Excuse me. So the adverse witness test is basically like what's the word I'm looking for? Like opponent testimony. Where are there counter narratives to the gospel? Are there counterpoints from opponents of the church that preserve some sense of the historical Jesus? And of course, they're drawing all of this stuff out of these reported, the reported opposition of the opponents to the church. But of course, these are, I mean, this is just when you look at, like when you look at the ways in which the Gospels portray the Pharisees, or when they talk about what took place in the Sanhedrin, it's patently obvious to somebody who has some historical grounding that this was all stuff written to denigrate these Jewish institutions. So that's the 8 tests that Strobel goes through with Craig Blomberg on in order to determine the historicity of the Gospels.
Like absolutely fail, in my opinion. Like, it was not even like I'm squinting. It's like they all. So I'm not even trying to be biased either. It's like it's like they really just don't. They don't do what they say. What he says they do.
There's just nothing
there. Yeah. So we're now up to chapter 3, which I thought we were way further ahead.
I know. I can't believe we only did 2 chapters. And we probably should have been farther, but then the next time I was on your show, we broke the internet, and it just,
that's the we don't talk about that episode.
No, we won't talk about that episode.
No,
so, yeah.
no.
So, anyways, after a long
learning
time,
experience, I'll put it that way.
We're finally back. We're finally talking about chapter 3 in the Case for Christ, which is called the documentary evidence. Can you guess what that's all about, David?
Evidence from a documentary, I guess. Did you release a documentary alongside of it? I'm not sure. I don't know why it's called the documentary evidence, actually.
Well, because it's evidence drawn from documents. So not documentaries, but documents. So these are basically, the chapter is set up to review the manuscript evidence for the New Testament. Let me just actually, maybe if I just pull up and read a little bit from the chapter here to set it up so people know what's going on. Obtaining secret corporate memos is one thing, verifying their authenticity is another. Before a journalist can publish their contents or a prosecutor can admit documents as evidence in a trial, steps must be taken to make sure they're genuine. So this is basically what he follows through with the stories or with the Gospels. He says there's significant questions. And they're equally relevant in examining the New Testament. When I hold a Bible in my hands, and I love this part because this is just ripped right out of the great apologist Josh McDowell. I say great in this sense of, he's been around for a long time and everybody knows who he is. But this is something that Josh McDowell, this was part of his whole presentation, is he would say, I had certainty that I could hold a Bible in my hands and trust that it was the same Bible that was, written by
that Jesus wrote.
Yeah, that Jesus wrote, of course.
Yeah, in American.
Well, I mean, Lee Strobel is basically just riffing off of Josh McDowell here. He says, when I hold a Bible in my hands, essentially I'm holding copies of ancient historical records. The original manuscripts of the biographies of Jesus, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and all the other books of the Old and New Testaments have long ago crumbled into dust. So how can I be sure that these modern day versions, the end products of countless copying throughout the ages, bear any resemblance to what the authors originally wrote? In addition, how can I tell if these 4 biographies are telling the whole story? What if there are other biographies Jesus that have been censored because the early church didn't like the image of Jesus they portrayed. How could I have confidence that church politics haven't squelched biographies of Jesus that were every bit as accurate as the 4 that we finally included in the New Testament? So Lee Strobel wrote this book way back in the early 1990s, I think.
I think it was 98. I looked it up.
98.
Last night. Yeah.
So, but Lee Strobel obviously wrote this book long before Bart Ehrman wrote his 2 books, his scholarly work, Forgery and Counterforgery, and then his popular work based on forgery and counterforgery, the extremely popular bestseller Forged, where he basically demonstrates from the manuscript evidence all these things. Yes, the 4 biographies aren't telling the whole stories. Yes, there were other biographies of Jesus, and yes, there is tons of censorship going on throughout the manuscripts of the New Testament. So maybe if Ehrman had published this book before 1998, then Lee would have just skipped this chapter, but somehow I doubt it.
Yeah, because it's my understanding that we don't have any originals at all. The best we have is copies of copies of copies, and we can see very clearly where some have been forged, right?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I don't know about, let's not use the word forged in this sense, because that's a much more complicated question, but we can certainly see where we have tons of manuscript evidence which shows that the scribes who copied these manuscripts were also invested in their contents and would make changes to them. We also see from the evidence from the manuscripts themselves evidence of their transmission from more from earlier source documents into something that now more closely resembles the New Testament. So yeah. Now the way Strobel sets up each of the chapters in his books, each chapter is the contents of an interview that he conducted with an expert in various fields. And I have to say right at the outset that one of the things that does pain me about this book is that the expert that he interviewed for chapter 3 is the late great Bruce M. Metzger, who was arguably the greatest, if not one of the greatest, if not the greatest, textual critics of the New Testament. He was a brilliant scholar, and I think he would I think he would be troubled by some of the ways that that he is presented in this chapter on the manuscripts. So yeah. So where do we want to go with this?
What do you remember? Do you have notes on what was talked about in that chapter?
I do. I have a couple of things that that I've highlighted. First of all, so Strobel starts with this claim, with this point that the New Testament manuscripts are copies of copies of copies. I'll just read a little bit of this here. He says, I'll be honest with you, I said to Metzger. When I first found out that there was no surviving originals of the New Testament, I was really skeptical. I thought, if all we have are copies of copies of copies, how can I have any confidence in the New Testament we have today? That the New Testament we have today bears any resemblance whatsoever to what was originally written. How do you respond to this? So Metzger goes through and basically talks about how we evaluate manuscripts and weigh the evidence from them. While we have many copies of copies of copies of the New Testament documents, scholars, textual critics, are also able to carefully analyze their contents and group them to within families to show that certain manuscripts belong together, and through this procedure, are pretty confident about being able to reconstruct what at least the earliest stages of a number of the New Testament documents that we have, some of the earliest stages of those, at least as they appeared in the 2nd century. So at one point here, this is I'll just read something that Metzger says, and I think this is important. He says, we have copies of the New Testament commencing within a couple generations from the writing of the originals, whereas in the case of other ancient texts, maybe 5, 8, or 10 centuries elapsed between the original and the earliest surviving copies. Now, I know for a fact what Metzger is getting at is basically, if you consider all the individual documents of everything in the New Testament as representative of the New Testament together, then, we have this enormous amount of material, thousands and thousands of manuscripts, and the earliest of them are, within generations, decades of when they purport to have been written, or when scholars think that they were written. And this is this gap is much tighter than it is for other ancient works, such as Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey, and the writings of Plato and things like that. Our manuscript copies of those tend to be much later. Now, I do believe that since this book was published, that gap has shrunk quite a bit with more recent manuscript discoveries. But I do have a note here, and I think it's important to point something out. In my note here, I said, I don't know that there is much controversy regarding the stability of the text that we have, which date to the mid-2nd century at best. The issue is with how much or how little we actually know of the Gospels prior to the 3rd century. So how much do we know about the picture of the Gospels prior to the year 200, basically? The massive number of differences within individual manuscripts can be traced back to a more or less stable set of copies, but problematically, these also illustrate precisely how substantial changes could occur in generations prior. So basically, what I'm getting at here is that, yes, from the manuscripts we have, we can show that there is a textual stability, that the text of the New Testament by the point of our earliest dated copies has already started to settle in to the forms that we have them now. Not entirely, but they've certainly started to settle in more clearly to the forms that we have them now. But problematically, the earliest copies that we have all date back to the 2nd century. So in the next section, they talk about the number of New Testament manuscripts that we have. Lee Strobel asks, he says, with regard to the 1st century historian Josephus, we have where is this here? He says, when you talk about a great multiplicity of manuscripts, how does that contrast with other ancient books that are routinely accepted by scholars as being reliable? So he goes through the numbers, right? And, there's not a lot. And Strobel says these numbers were surprising. There is but the thinnest thread of manuscripts connecting these ancient works to the modern world. By comparison, I asked, how many New Testament Greek manuscripts are in existence today? Metzger's eyes got wide. More than 5,000 have been cataloged. He said with enthusiasm, his voice going up an octave.
Yeah.
That was a mountain of manuscripts compared to the anthills of Tacitus and Josephus. So now, this is something I want to... Yeah, no, go ahead, and then I want to get into this.
I was going to say, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Kip? Did Josephus ever claim to walk on water or raise the dead in Jerusalem from the graves, or that die and rise again?
So now, Josephus certainly made some some claims that we would accept as ahistorical. More famously, in one section, like the Antiquities of the Jews, which is Josephus's magnum opus, is really it's an exhaustive history of the Jewish people, starting in Adam, right, and then
The first
all
Jewish
the
person.
yes, the first Jewish person, and tracing this all the way forward to the Roman invasion of Jerusalem and the destruction of the Jerusalem temple. Now, in the final book, in book 20, there's a section towards the end where Josephus rehearses a long catalog of events that took place leading up to the destruction of the temple, which were signposts that the temple was doomed to destruction. He's, a religious Jew. He's writing as a religious Jewish person. He believes that the temple was destroyed by, in part by divine mandate, and he's providing evidence for this. Now, some of the stuff, like he's like, there was a cow that gave birth to a rabbit, and the rabbit gave birth to a pig, and of course, none of this ever happened, right? So let's be clear here. Josephus makes some absolutely outlandish claims that no historian accepts.
Well,
Yeah,
there we go. There we go. So I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I'll just mention one more thing. One of the things that Josephus also reports is that in the 3rd century, when Alexander the Great was going on his campaign, sweeping across the Mediterranean, when he arrived in Jerusalem, Josephus tells us that the priests who were in charge of the city basically opened the gates and let Alexander and his army in. And then they went and grabbed they happened to have a scroll of the book of Daniel standing by, and they pulled it out and opened it up for Alexander and showed him, all the prophecies that Daniel made of Alexander's coming. And Alexander was so satisfied by that he just got up and left. So
that's before Daniel was written, which is interesting.
That never happened. It did not happen. And yes, critical scholars are in agreement that all those prophecies of Alexander were written after the fact, long after Alexander was dead. So my point is, there's fantastical stuff that you'll find in Josephus. It's not quite to the level or the frequency, I don't think, that you will discover in the Gospels. However, it's a good plan, Jason Rollins. So it maybe not with the frequency, but it's definitely in there. Now, importantly, historians and scholars know how to handle this stuff, right? We don't just look and go, Josephus reported it. It must have happened.
Stamp of authenticity. Because
Josephus gets a lot of stuff. No, go ahead.
Sorry, I keep trying to butt in. I apologize. I was assuming you're going to say, "Oh, Josephus doesn't record anything bizarre," but he didn't. But what's interesting is you say that, but I guess the point is no. Well, I won't say no, but the majority of people who look at the text, historians, don't go, "Aha!" Therefore, it happened. They don't
exactly. And there's a very good reason why there are so many copies of New Testament documents and so few copies of most everything else. And the reason for that is because the Roman Church was basically in charge of, empire-wide manuscript production during the late stages of the Roman Empire, and then into the Middle Ages. Sorry, into the medieval period. This is not the reason there's so many copies is because scribes were occupied with copying the New Testament, to the detriment of all these other ancient works. So in many ways, it's a bit of a tragedy that we have so many copies of the New Testament and so few copies of everything else.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I have a question. So the disciples were told to go and preach the gospel to all the lands. Keep in mind, the disciples were told this. So Jesus in a 12, right? They obviously must not have gotten very far. But do we have any gospels written in like Mandarin or ancient Chinese, or do we have any gospels written like from different languages that are early, like before like 500?
Oh no, nothing like
So it's
that.
all in that tiny little dot. If you pull out a world map, it's like a dot of like where all of it comes from.
So I wanted to show you some stuff here. Pertaining especially to this question of manuscripts. Manuscripts is kind of my thing. So if you can give me some screen share abilities here. Do I have it? All right. You love the screen share.
I just sit back and I just get a whiskey and I just absorb.
All right. I'm going to introduce you, David, to the Center for the Study of New Testament Manuscripts. There it is. So this is a project to basically digitize all manuscripts of the New Testament. And the really amazing thing about I better not do that again. Once I was on a stream and I went to hit stop screen share and I actually hit leave studio by mistake. So I won't do that.
Is this have we been over this website? Has like shows all the manuscripts?
Yeah.
Okay,
but I definitely think it's worthwhile going over this again. So I'm going to show you this. You can go over and look for yourself. I'm just trying to find the right.
Oh, okay, good.
Oh, here we are. This one here,
and
I'll show you this.
You've stopped. Yeah, okay, cool. Found it.
There we go. Okay, so here you see a couple of things. You can search by keyword or verse. You can just punch in a verse from the New Testament, and it'll pull up all the manuscripts that they have digitized with those passages. But I want you to pay close attention here as I scroll down to some of these limiters, some of these filters that they have here. You'll notice you can just choose to look at only papyrus manuscript, or you can look at majuscule or minuscule. So these are later manuscripts written on vellum. You can look at lectionaries, which are special manuscripts used for worship and for services, and you can restrict them to various contents. You can just do searches for the Book of Acts or the Catholic epistles or the Pauline epistles. Now notice here, David, I think the really important one, you'll notice you can search by selected dates. Now when I hit century, notice it says start, select one. What's the first option there?
It's not showing up, but
it's not. It's not. Oh, probably because it's not showing the. I probably have to share the entire screen. Maybe let me do that.
I can see it's just not when you click on it, nothing happens.
Yeah, yeah. Hold on a sec. Let me try it this way. See if you can see it this way. If I do the entire screen, and then. Okay, so if I go here, can you see it now?
Yeah, we start the second century.
The second century. Now, why is that significant?
Well, because Jesus lived a long time before that.
Yeah. So Jesus and the apostles and most of the texts from the New Testament purport to have come from the first century. And I have no option to click to look at first century manuscripts. because there are none. All right. Now, if I do a search just for all 2nd century manuscripts, this is what I get. Okay. I've got P32, P46, P46 again, P52, P66, P66 again, P77, P90, P98, P103, P104. And that's it.
I think that's grown since we did this last. I think
Do you think so?
I think that it actually has, yeah. Maybe they've split up. So
you know what? You know what? One of the issues there is one of these Rolf's 963 is actually a Septuagint manuscript. So what we didn't do.
Yeah.
That's probably the other thing we didn't do was hit that button.
Gospels. Yeah.
Gospels.
Yeah, there we go.
So here we go. P52, P66, P77, P90, P103, P104. That's it. That's all of them. Now I'll show you this one because is this the one? No, it's the other one. Just a sec here. There's two P66s, right?
Yeah.
There it is. Now this is a remarkable manuscript. So, but this is really, really unusual. We actually have a copy of, a mostly intact codex, a little booklet, dating to the end of the 2nd century. So this dates to about 200, and this is the Gospel of John. But easily one of the most remarkable manuscripts that we have of the New Testament. But I think the important point here to take away is that in terms of our manuscript evidence, it needs to be weighed. Yes, Strobel can make the claim that, we have all these manuscripts, 5,000, which date back to within, generations of the life of Jesus. Sure, but not all of them, right? Just this tiny, tiny little handful. And yes, we have one of them that looks like this, and it's, just the Gospel of John. Oh, and it dates to 200. But most of them look like this, right? Most of them look like this. Just a couple of fragments. Written on both sides, probably from a codex or a book of some kind, but we have extremely limited information on how big this book is, what its contents were. We have no idea what's going on before or after what's happening on this fragment. Now I'll show you one more thing and then we'll move on, because this is one that gets brought up in the chapter as well. So this is easily the most famous New Testament manuscript fragment. It's possibly the most famous biblical manuscript fragment. This is known as P52. I probably showed this before. Did I show you my P52 puzzle? It's pretty cool. Oh, sorry.
I'm sick of you not showing me all your show and tell stuff.
Let me get this.
Go get your puzzle, because that's
So, because I used to go, the P52 is otherwise known as the John Rylands Papyrus, and it's called that because it is at the Rylands Library at the University of Manchester, which is where I went to school. And in the gift shop, they sell. I
recognize it, but it's been so long. That's so good.
It's so cool though, because let me open up and show you. Really? I thought, oh no, I thought for sure. Oh, never mind. I don't want to show you my jigsaw puzzle anymore.
Oh, why? What happened?
So, because I thought for sure, I could have sworn that it actually had like the recto and the verso on each piece, but it's not a two-sided puzzle. Oh, now I'm disappointed. Now I feel like I've misled
Boo!
everybody.
Lame
I should
puzzle.
go.
Boo!
I'm sorry. I'll leave everyone.
It's still so cool. Hey, you bring the knife, all right? I need to have some cool show and tell
But
stuff.
yeah, I mean the puzzle's cool too, right? Like even though
Yeah.
it's not, it is still pretty cool. So
I
this
mean,
is
what a niche market for that for that puzzle.
right.
I mean,
Yes.
you're probably one of 12 in the world who has that, including like
No,
4 at your creator's house.
no, I'm pretty sure most of my friends. I'm pretty sure most of my friends
Yeah, that's so good. That's so
in the
good.
field have it. So yeah. So let me just now they talk a little bit about this particular manuscript in the chapter. So just yeah, he's got a section here called "The Scrap That Changed History." Of the entire New Testament, I said, what is the earliest portion that we possess today? Metzger didn't have to ponder the answer. That would be a fragment of the Gospel of John containing material from chapter 18. It has 5 verses, 3 on one side, 2 on the other, and it measures about 2.5 by 3.5 inches, he said. Then they talk about its discovery. And then he asks about how early it's dated, and Metzger says it originated between AD 100 to 150. Lots of other prominent paleographers. A paleographer is somebody who studies script types in ancient manuscripts as a means to date them. He says other prominent paleographers like Sir Frederick Kenyon, Sir Harold Bell, Adolf Deisman, W.H.P. Hatch, Ulrich Wilkin, and others have agreed with his assessment. Deisman was convinced that it goes back at least to the reign of Emperor Hadrian, which is AD 117 to 138, or even Emperor Trajan, which is AD 98 to 117. And then he goes on to say that these conclusions were able to influence generations of scholars who scoffed at this gospel's reliability. Now, importantly, one of the things that we know right off the bat here when it comes to this little fragment, and I'll show it again here. Let me just bring it up. I mean, how can you suggest to me, David, maybe one of the problems of making an argument of gospel reliability from this single piece of papyrus that has a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14 lines on 2
As
sides.
a paleographer and textual critic myself,
I
I would say
that's why I'm asking.
No, I would say that it's such a small piece,
Right?
that we're kind of making a very large assumption from a small piece of evidence.
Right.
This would be like finding
Exactly.
one wooden plank and saying this was the Ark of Noah,
The Titanic, or the Ark of Noah.
yeah,
Exactly. Right.
yeah.
So no, exactly. Now this so this fragment it comes from John chapter 18, which is the story. It's Jesus appearing before Pilate. I mean, we don't even know. Like I showed you P66 earlier. We don't even know, was P52 a copy of the entire Gospel of John, even, or was it just a copy of like the Passion story?
Mm.
We don't know. Was this story of Jesus's trial part of another text even, and not the Gospel of John? And that just brings to mind, maybe I'll hold off on this. No, I'll talk about this now. So something that has happened in the intervening time since you and I streamed last about this this topic is the publication of a new manuscript fragment. A pretty exciting one. P5, I think it's P5775. Let me just look this up.
How can you trust it if it wasn't in the King James Bible? That's all I have to say. Where was I? Sorry, I'm in. How have you not told us? How has no one told me about this fragment? What do you mean?
So, I don't know, man. But let's talk about
I'm
this.
missing out on
I'd
knives,
love
I'm missing out on
I'd
fragments.
love to pull up some pictures for you. It's maybe it's P5575. So very recently, it was just shortly before Christmas. This fragment from what's called the Oxyrhynchus collection at the Bodmer. Yes, thank you, the governor. P stands for papyrus. Yes. So there's this huge collection over at the University of Oxford of papyrus fragments that were dug out of basically the garbage heap at this Egyptian site called Oxyrhynchus. It's loaded with material, not just New Testament documents, but all sorts of different types of texts, different Greek classical texts, documents themselves, like letters and receipts and things. So Michael Holmes and somebody else, I don't remember the other guy's name, but I used to work for Michael Holmes. He is affiliated with the Museum of the Bible. But Michael Holmes and a colleague of his published this small fragment, which contains a handful of lines of Greek text on it, and they have dated it to basically the second half of the first century, so between 150 to 200 CE, maybe into the second century, but it's clearly among this group, right, of these very, very old manuscripts of the New Testament from the second century. What's really exciting about this fragment is it doesn't preserve a text from the New Testament that we recognize. So it is a version of a parable that Jesus taught. It bears some similarities to another text that we know called the Gospel of Thomas. But it's not quite the Gospel of Thomas either. It looks like it's something in between Matthew, Luke, Gospel of Thomas, and it dates all the way back to the second century. It could potentially be the oldest New Testament manuscript. One of the oldest New Testament manuscripts, if not the oldest New Testament manuscripts, and it's not even the New Testament.
Jason Rowland mentioned that someone had told me this. I think it was Robin Faith Walsh. I do remember that, but I thought that was I thought that was like way later. Like I thought that was in like 400s. But you're saying it's early. You're saying it's 150 to 200.
This particular one, which was just published, is very, very early. Yes.
Right.
So,
do we have any photos of that one?
We do. Let me see if I can. Actually, let me see if I can. Let me try another search here. Let's try P5575. I always get the numbers mixed up, especially because. Oh, here we go. Yes. So, the Sayings of Jesus Papyrus, P-Oxy 5575. Let's just look at some images here.
Where was this found?
So in Oxyrhynchus, this massive garbage dump. Wow. Let me just pull up. Let's pull up this picture here. This is just an. Oh, it's Wesley Huff's Instagram. I don't like. No, I shouldn't say it. That I should be nice. Let me see. Here, let's see if I can pull this one up. This is on Twitter. This will work better. Here we go. So, yeah, let me share my screen.
While you're doing that, I actually asked before what everyone was drinking, and we have a smorgasbord of drinks.
Oh, everybody's not drinking Japanese whiskey.
They're getting high. We also have Stacey Swan's podcast, water, Jason tea, Moscow Mule, from Cat, water, coffee. A lot of people aren't drinking with us, so a lot of people are drinking water, kombucha. That's cool. And someone I saw it before, is drinking water whilst on a treadmill, which makes me feel horrible.
Whoa.
It makes me feel like
let's next time, David. Next time, let's do this stream on the treadmill.
On a stairmaster.
On a stairmaster.
Yeah.
So you see that, right? And here, this is actually a very nice, concise description. A newly published papyrus fragment containing parts of 17 to 19 lines of sayings of Jesus that reflect features also known from the Gospels: Matthew, Luke, and Thomas. So it's this happened right around just right before right after, I'm sorry, we did our last streams on this. This is an exciting manuscript for a couple of reasons. And on the one hand, like I said, it's one of our oldest New Testament manuscripts. It's not even a New Testament manuscript, really. One of our earliest pieces of early Christian writing, and it's this weird, it's like this interesting amalgamation of gospel traditions that doesn't belong to any one gospel. So that's pretty cool. The other thing that I think is very interesting about this particular manuscript is that the closest text that it does compare to is the Gospel of Thomas. Scholars generally agree that the Gospel of Thomas, that as we know it, is a second century text, late second century. I think it's conventionally dated usually to the 180s. But scholars have also argued, I think pretty persuasively, that there are pockets of traditions and sayings within the Gospel of Thomas that actually date all the way back to maybe even the first century. Like, some of this stuff was actually contemporary with the four canonical Gospels. Now here we have a manuscript that, is just as older than manuscript copies that we have of several of the of other Gospels. It's older than any copy that we have of the Gospel of Matthew or Luke, and certainly Mark, right? And it looks like it's kind of got some Thomas-y sort of stuff in it. That's pretty cool, I think.
That's very cool.
It provides, it helps to flesh out this picture, right? And I think is really illustrative of part of the problem that I've been really trying to get at here when it comes to evaluating the manuscripts, right? It's the second century. Everything that we know about, the New Testament from a manuscript perspective gets you back to the second century. And now we have to include this because why not? Like, you have to. It's part of the data.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I have a couple of questions. First question is, first there's a great comment from Simone. Thomas Truthers must be going wild. The first question is, let me say them both because I'm going to forget because I'm a bit drunk. But what is the Gospel of Thomas about? Like, what can you explain that? And secondly, is what about the argument that says that, look, the Gospels and a bunch of this stuff wasn't written down for ages. We know that, but the church survived and the church thrived because it was the true church. Or maybe let's even forget the true church and just say it survived because there were so many people who were transformed by this message, and that's what matters. And they eventually wrote down their creeds, and so therefore it's reliable in some way, in that it's still affecting people today and still doing its thing today.
So first, the Gospel of Thomas. That second question, I'm not entirely. You'll probably have to try and ask it again because I'm not entirely sure. Maybe I'll tackle that first. So I think, I've said this a couple times and in a couple places before, that Christianity, as we know it, early Christianity from the first, second century. So this is like Paul's Christianity. We know Christianity predominantly from the writings of Paul. Paul was writing between like 50 and 70 CE. I think the book of the book of Hebrews you can date back to kind of around that time as well. And then you have like the Gospels and just about everything else sort of at the end of the first century. But all of this stuff, it's all Greek literature, and all of it reflects what's going on in the Greek Christian church. So these are the churches outside of Palestine, Judea. These are the churches that Paul and his colleagues have been busy planting as missionaries across the Roman Empire, right? Paul makes a pretty strong point throughout his writings that his gospel is for the Gentiles. And one of the major points in a lot of Paul's writings is the contention that exists between him and between the early establishment of Christians in the Jerusalem church. So these were the Aramaic speaking first followers of Jesus who set up camp in Jerusalem, right? Mm-hmm. This was for all intents and purposes a Jewish sect at this point. The first Christians who were, in Jerusalem were effectively basically just practicing a form of Judaism on, with the conviction that Jesus was the expected Messiah who had died and been resurrected. Now, importantly, we know nothing about this church. We know nothing about the adherents except what Paul tells us. That's it. And importantly, this church, this first early Christian movement, this sect of Judaism, it disappeared when the Romans destroyed the city in 70. And it's gone, which is why the Christianity that survived was Paul's Christianity. It was the Greek-speaking Christianity from the empire, right? So what we're already talking about is something that's a step removed from Jesus and Jesus and his followers. It's already a step removed from them. So that's kind of what we're talking about. And these are the manuscripts that we have. They come from this world. So it's I make that point, I guess, just to reinforce how complex this picture is, how much information we don't have, and with regards to whether or not there's some truth to the message of Christianity on the basis of the fact that it did survive. Whether this is some sort of sign of its reliability as an historian, I just look back on that and I go, well, that's history. History works like this. History is just a series of recurring accidents over and over and over again. You can't predict what's going. Well, I mean, you can't predict what's going to happen
unless you're Daniel. That kills me.
All right. So Gospel of Thomas. What is the Gospel of Thomas? I'll be quick with this. So this is it's a gospel. It's called the sayings of Jesus as they were recorded by his disciple Thomas Didymus, the twin. They're the secret sayings of Jesus, and it's just that. It's a collection of sayings. So it's not like the other four gospels, which is like a running narrative, right? It's just sayings of Jesus. And it's been thought that, although I think this is probably Not the case anymore, but early on, scholars have hypothesized about the existence of a source for lots of the material that's in common between Matthew and Luke, but doesn't exist in Mark. Scholars have called that Q, and suggested that both Matthew and Luke are drawing from the same common source. And early on, it was thought that that source, that hypothetical source, was a sayings gospel. And they traced a bunch of the stuff, the sayings in the sayings in Thomas, also back to this sayings gospel. So there's some thought among early Christian scholars that the Gospels might have started just as collected sayings of Jesus. The followers of Jesus started just, putting together things that they remembered him saying. And then, this collection of sayings grew to include certainly a whole bunch of sayings that they just made up and attributed to Jesus, and eventually, developed into this narrative with a with a beginning in his travel log through in and around Galilee, and then down to the Decapolis and into Jerusalem. So, like, the Gospel of Thomas then has suggested to some that it takes sort of this, maybe it's exemplary of this primitive form of a pre-gospel, which was just comprised of sayings of Jesus. So and it just it goes like that. Jesus said this, Jesus said this, Jesus said this, from beginning to end. It's just this collection of sayings. A number of the sayings are clearly drawn from either the other gospels or from a common source that the other gospels have, but then some of them are like wild. The character of the Gospel of Thomas is it's been called a Gnostic gospel. So it's part of this movement, this early Christian movement, which seems to have taught that there was, part of becoming a true Christian was attaining this secret knowledge. It's very wooey. Spiritually, the physical is wicked and evil and to be overcome, and truth and light and harmony all exists in the spiritual world, right?
I love learning with the Gnostics and other sects of Christianity. So is the gospel of Thomas isn't the gospel that has the giant talking cross?
The giant cross. No, that's the Gospel of Peter.
Yeah. So what? I have a random question. What's your favorite non-canon? Oh my god! I'm very. Here we go.
We're not moving on until you can say it.
What's your favorite non-canonical gospel?
I did it.
I still don't even know if that was right. This whiskey is like fucking me up, to be honest.
Oh, it doesn't take much, does it?
No, it doesn't. This is wild.
Oh, my favorite non-canonical gospel. So the
well,
I like both.
Give me a recommendation, because I want to read one. I haven't read one, so give me a recommendation.
So you should read the Gospel of Peter, and you should also read the Gospel of Barnabas. And now I might be this is starting to go to my head too. And so I might be mixing these up, but one of them in particular you definitely should read, because it is outrageously anti-Semitic, and like this is it's thought that this is potentially one of the reasons why it was very, very popular for a long time. But it's thought that maybe this is one of the reasons why it just didn't make the cut for the festal letter of Athanasius that he wrote in was it 350 or 380 AD, which is the official stamping of the,
Yeah.
these are the canonical texts. But it's thought that maybe the reason why it didn't make it in was because it is like wildly anti-Semitic. But yeah, it's a wild read. So yeah, definitely those two. And you should read the Gospel of Thomas too, because the Gospel of Thomas is rightfully considered, if not in whole, certainly portions of it contemporary with stuff with stuff that is recorded in the four canonical Gospels. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So, wow, that was a hell of a tangent, wasn't it?
That was.
Lee Strobel, guys.
Tying this back to the documentary evidence.
Oh, yeah. Where the hell was I?
Well, no, that's great. This is
right,
what we do.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, actually, maybe before we do that, we usually do super chats to the end, but this one's kind of in line with what we're talking about. Aaron Colson, the Pope of Deep Drinks, who may be stepping down. Well, is stepping down next month. Dun, 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 dun. I don't know if that's the first time I mentioned it, but as the Pope, so the seat will be open. But we'll talk about that later. But Aaron Colson has a super chat, $2. Thank you so much. How does the P5575 affect the Q theory?
Oh, it's a good question. Hold on a second. I just have to. I'll answer it in just 1 second here.
I reckon the person who found it just wants to sin, to be honest.
Probably, but yeah, you know how it goes, right? Sorry. So yeah, it's a good question, and I'm probably not the right person to answer that question, because I am not I'm not really familiar enough with Q to say one way or another. But as on the basis of the stuff that I've read, because that was of course one of the questions that was raised when this was first published was, is this Q? And I believe that everybody has unanimously come out and said, no, this is definitely not Q. So I will say it doesn't have any direct impact on the theory of Q itself, although I think it potentially lends some traction to how Q reflects our ideas about development of the Gospels. So I think what P5575 does for us is it provides us an example, a real life, tangible manuscript copy of, gospel traditions that were circulating on their way to being included within or turning into a gospel. Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
Did
it
you
does.
So, and I was just, I wanted to, if Aaron Carlson is going to step down, I would like to, can I make a nomination?
Well, it's
for
a
your
paid,
next.
it's like the highest tier on Patreon. So if you want to nominate them,
Oh, well,
to pay the most on
I
Patreon,
want
go for
to,
it.
can you try and
Oh,
get Papa Emeritus?
wow. Yeah. That was actually the theme I was going with originally, the anti-pope. We had cardinals and stuff. And to my patrons, I am getting some animations and stuff done for the tiers. So thank you for your patience.
So,
but yeah, join the Patreon, by the way, everyone, because we've got some cool stuff coming up.
Here's the moment where we pause and just say, God damn, how much do we love Ghost?
Oh,
right.
Oh, it's just that one song, man. That Square Hammer is just, it's just hit me so differently. Like it's a good song.
Did you listen to the new album? Came out in the fall. Oh my god, it's
no.
They're just so good, David.
Oh man, I've just
thumbs up for Ghost, chat. Yeah, let's hear it.
If anyone hasn't heard, it's kind of like metalheads don't consider it metal in a way. Like a lot of people say it's not real metal.
Nope.
But
Yeah.
I like it. Whatever it is, I like it.
It's
Just
remarkable.
it's cool. Go
It's
type in
just so
Square Hammer Ghost after the
good.
stream. It's really good.
So good.
It's just such a
They have,
bizarre and
but it's
eerie
even there are
vibe.
so, like, it's not even just like that. I mean, it's like Square Hammer is a killer song, but they have so many. There are,
Yeah.
like, once you dive into the into the ghost rabbit hole, it's practically endless. They actually have one of my favorite songs by Ghost is actually called Bible. And it's so good. But yeah, they do an amazing, I don't know if you've heard this. Have any of you guys heard their cover of Missionary Man?
I don't know if I have.
Do you know that song by the Eurythmics? I think it was originally by the Eurythmics, but oh, it's so good. So good.
Oh man.
Look at that. Even the metal theologian says he's got no beef with Ghost.
Yeah, it's good. That's good. Metal
Right
theologian, tell us a little bit about yourself, because that's an interesting dichotomy in your name there. We actually have
Metal theologian does semi-regular tours of his own record collection on his channel. You should check it out sometime. It's pretty great. Oh yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
We have a $20 thanks. I think that is.
Oh,
I can't actually see what it
yeah.
is, but thank you so much for the $20. That's amazing. Grumpy Old Man said, "How can you tell where they were written?"
Yeah, that's a good question. So
Thank you for $5.
and now this is so the reason I guess I take it as I said, the Gospels, none of the Gospels were written in Palestine or Judea. The reason, this is what scholars posit, is that the Gospels were all written in Greek, and based on what we think we know about the first Christians, being this Jewish sect basically in the first century in Jerusalem, it's very, very improbable that any one of them would have, circulated their literature about Jesus in Greek, if they even could. So that's and there's some of the stuff I don't know really well, because I'm not a New Testament scholar, but as I understand it, there's bits within the text themselves in terms of some of the geography. There's tells that indicate that that these probably don't come from Judea. So all that to say, that's how most scholars are pretty certain they weren't written there. The question as to where they were written remains pretty wide open beyond that.
Could you touch a little bit, because you mentioned that in one of the last streams that even though the Gospels were written in Greek, if they were originally written in Aramaic or some other language, there would be tells in the Greek. If the Greeks were a translation, and we don't have them. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So one of the things that we do have, this is this is controversial. Not every scholar buys into this, but I think it's relatively compelling. It's like, how our friend Dr. Moat, Matthew Monger, was telling you about translation in that stream that you did earlier, and he talked about he would be interpreting for you, right? One of the things also that you would discover, like, we can tell, in particular, you can usually tell when it comes to the ancient works, especially, you can see indications within the language that suggest this was translated from another language, right? Like, we see this, the Septuagint. This is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible. When you read the Septuagint, you encounter all sorts of constructions which are grammatically fine in Greek, but maybe a little odd. But then you look at that compared to the Hebrew and you understand, oh, well, it's, somebody who's more familiar with the Hebrew language is translating this into Greek. Maybe the Greek isn't so strong that they can, just do it like that, right? So it's like there's like these it's almost like scoring, like marks that make their way through, which show that this was translated from Hebrew or Aramaic. Within the Gospels themselves, there are a handful of places where scholars think that they can detect, and it's almost entirely sayings of Jesus. In a handful of the sayings of Jesus, there are indicators within the way that the Greek construction was formed that suggest this was translated out of Aramaic. The way that the Greek writer is using a prepositional phrase, or the way that sorry, I'm speaking grammar gobbledygook now. I'm sorry, but
no, but you're saying it is translated from the Aramaic.
Not the Gospels.
Oh yeah.
There's just a small handful of like a couple of sayings of Jesus that bear telltale marks.
This lines up with what you were saying before about there probably was this earlier maybe sayings tradition around Jesus, and then the rest got padded out hundreds, like 100 years later.
So, and they're and as far as I'm aware too, and again, this is not something that I'm. This is not my. As Josh would say, this is not my area of expertise.
I want to throw something at Josh when he says that.
You notice he's not saying,
I'll make up wild claims. Why can't he do it?
You notice he's not saying it as much anymore. So yeah. But anyways, God damn it.
No, it's the I do have sorry. Sorry, guys. We're both at the very drunk level. Well, I'm very drunk. Look, I haven't drank that much. I don't drink that much anymore. Deep drinks has ruined my appetite for booze.
Oh,
but,
no.
When I say not much, I still probably drink once a week. But if deep drinks isn't on, but
okay.
So I have a question, and this is very tangential to what we're talking about, but I have this issue with apologetics at the moment that I'm thinking through. I've been having a lot of discussions. I had a discussion with a Christian and an atheist from The Divide on my channel recently about the word "this generation will not pass away until they see all these things happen." Right?
All right.
Bill, the Christian, he's got a background in the classics, and he bring out a very compelling argument for why that generation didn't mean how we read it in English. And we get the same thing with, Matthew and Luke's genealogies, where they say, well, this is actually in the Gospel of Luke, it's actually Mary's bloodline, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But then when you actually read the English, it says, Joseph, it says it's Joseph's grandfather or whatever, or it was them. So the issue I have with apologetics is, if what they're saying is true, and this is where I want you to weigh in, if what they're saying is true, shouldn't the Bible in English say it like that? Like, should it translate it like that? So, for example, with "this generation will not pass away until they see all these things happen," and then you talk to an apologist, and you're like, that doesn't make sense. They go, this generation actually means a race of people. The Jewish people will not pass away until all these things happen, right? Well, then I go, okay, so you're saying the English translation of the Bible is wrong for our English ears. So no. You just need to understand the context of generation. Why? Why do I need to understand the context of the generation? Because the understanding I have is a translation of the Bible is supposed to make it easy for you to understand the original context of the scriptures. So what I'm asking is, let's say the apologists are right. Let's just grant the apologists are right for these problems, these contradictions.
They could be right.
In the Bible,
right?
Yeah,
Why not?
They could be, yeah. So in that case, shouldn't Bible translators, assuming they're right, shouldn't Bible translators then translate those words how the apologists are saying it? So, for example, this race shall not pass away. Wouldn't that be the case?
Right.
Or is that going to, because like this seems like the biggest problem in apologetics, and depending on how you answer, I may or may not make a video about this, because this is
before it goes,
apologists essentially saying that the Bible is lying in English. In English.
Before it goes away, do you want to grab Simone's chat there and throw that up on the screen?
This
the one with, there we go. Yeah.
Well, this one.
Hador. Yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah,
okay.
It's the same thing. There you go.
I couldn't tell. Hador
Hazah. So that's the Hebrew for this generation. Hador Hazah. So if I think what you're making an important point here, and I actually think so I watched, it took me like 2 days to watch a stream that, are you familiar with this guy? I've only started seeing him fairly recently, but he does some good stuff. His name's Michael Beverly. Have you seen some of his stuff?
I'm better with faces.
He's got a beard, a white beard. So he did, but
beard.
It's a glorious beard, yes.
Oh, that is glorious. Yeah, I'm subscribing to the beard.
So I bring this up because he had on Rob Rowe from Sentinel Apologetics, and on his last live stream, Rob Rowe from Sentinel Apologetics gets very upset at me because I constantly refer to him as the Deepak Chopra of Christian apologetics. The reason I call him the Deepak Chopra of Christian apologetics is because he's a bright guy. I mean, he writes his own. He's an untrained layman who reads voraciously through his enormous collection of books that he has, over on the Evil Empire of Biblical Studies platform, Logos Biblical Software. Never mind that. So he's got this large collection of books that he's put together, and he reads voraciously, and he's so intensely interested in this stuff that he writes his own commentaries. He's got like a 600-page document, his own commentary that he's written on the book of Daniel, or he's done another one on, I don't know, I think it's the Gospel of Mark. I'm not sure, but bright guy. He does something in the sciences, like professionally, I think. But this is kind of like this is sort of his approach, is that he takes this, it's a very Deepak Chopra-y kind of approach to, the science of the texts and the science of the scholarship, and trying to fuse that with the mysticism of his faith. It's amusing, but he went on with Michael Beverly a couple of days ago on Michael Beverly's channel, and they had a 5.5 hour conversation. It took me like 2 days or 3 days to watch it, right? It was ridiculous. But Michael Beverly, I think rightly, made this point, because this is something that you encounter, right? This is what Christian apologetics is. It's this. It's that meme from the the Dumb and Dumber movie. That's the one. There you go.
5.5
That,
hours.
yeah.
I'm just
It's that
impressed with the
meme
man's
from
theory.
that Christian apologetics is that meme from that movie Dumb and Dumber, right? So you're telling me there's a chance. It
Yeah.
is leaping through hoop after hoop after hoop, connecting, a series of dots on the basis of the flimsiest of 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 historical value, and then suggesting this is the explanation for the thing that can't be explained.
Mm.
And this is, this is why when you encounter, I think, just about any Christian apologist, when you raise an objection, they always have an answer, right?
Mm.
Well, if you collate this calendar on the basis of this model that they were using back in the Bronze Age, then you can then this accounts for this discrepancy, and these sorts of things. So um in this stream, Michael Beverly, this is what Rob's doing, right? He's connecting dots, and if you read this brilliant you know 4th century Christian father, and you combine what he wrote with something that J.R.R. Tolkien said in The Lord of the Rings, and then you connect that to Augustine, and then back to Calvin, and if you look at this all through the lens of what it says in the Syrahexapla text of the book of Jeremiah, then you understand. You have the answer, and he's going through this sort of approach with Michael Beverly, and at one point, Michael just goes like, "Whoa, like." That's fine for you. You're a bright guy. But what about the 99.9% of people aren't going to get this?
Mm.
It's not clear, right? It's not simple. It's not straightforward. Uh because the because from a logical approach to the data, you can't make it fit. So you have to jump through the hoops, and you have to connect the dots in these bizarre, careening ways all across your page.
Mm.
It becomes nonsense to people. And I think that's a very roundabout way of kind of answering your question or your point, that like that's why the text doesn't say what was it, instead of this generation.
Yeah, well,
It's supposed to be,
we did a whole stream on it with these guys. Oh, it automatically tags me. That's cool.
oh
Drew the
wow,
Skeptic, Bill the Christian, and Bill has he's got a PhD in classics, and he knew his stuff. Like he really thought about this stuff, and he had a theory different from every, like it's his own theory kind of thing. Well, I think it is. But at the end of the conversation, I said, like, why is it so complicated? Like, if God had a
what,
message for humanity,
right?
but he's, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm a bit drunk, but he said, someone correct me, go and watch it for an hour and come back and tell me. He said it's not complicated, and I said, but it is. We just spent I'm thinking, like, we just spent an hour and a half like deucing it out, and I didn't even push back really very hard on a lot of the points because it's the first time of hearing them. But it was a great conversation. It was actually part 2 of the conversation. The first one was on their channel, The Divide. But it was one of those conversations where, like, it was actually really enjoyable, even though we disagreed. Like, it's like, I imagine what it would be like talking to Christopher Hitchens, where you could argue with him and still be enjoyable by the end of the conversation.
Yeah.
It was good. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate them coming on. Well, I actually have this one question. Sorry to pivot again.
So
Oh no, no. Sorry,
before
finish it.
we let me
Yeah.
just say this, because I think this is the key here, right? Like, here's the problem. Religion, in particular ancient religion, is complicated. It's super complicated, and then it's super complex, and it is difficult to understand. But one of the reasons for that is because it's not particularly logical. Like, it has to be, in order to make sure all the dots connect. So and for my money, that's where that's where religion fails. It can't address.
What would Christian Kip say?
What would Christian Kip say? Well, Christian Kip when I was last a Christian, well, maybe not when I was last a Christian, but there was a time in my life when I used to do just what like Rob Rowe and your friend Bill are doing, where I was like, well, you've just got to read you just got to read 2 centuries of early church fathers in order to understand what's going on here.
Mm.
And because I was able to take the time and had the wherewithal to make the sense of it, it seemed to me like, well, this is, once you get there, it should be easy for everybody else, but it's just not. Right? I came to realize my parents and my friends don't care about all of this stuff.
Yeah,
Right?
it's so true.
They just don't.
Pat Lowinger said $2. I've seen less massaging at a shiatsu parlor. Is that referencing the conversation with
I hope
with Bill? I don't know. I'm not actually sure.
I hope you're drinking Japanese whiskey, Pat.
I really want to connect with Pat. I keep seeing him around, and I'm like, that's so. But I've never actually. I don't think I've had a conversation with him. But so I actually had this comment written down a long time ago in one of because what I did is I went back into. I've got so many Google Docs that just say Kip Davis because he's been on the show so many times, and I've got like all the notes of the things I'm going to ask you. And one of the things was. When I interviewed Eric Manning from Testify Apologetics, I think he's also an author. He said that
I don't think he's an author.
Oh no, maybe not.
I don't think so.
I'll
ask him.
Yeah, it's good guy. Like he's like I'm friends with him.
Yeah,
we definitely don't see eye to eye, but that's actually I like friends like that. But anyway, he when we're having a conversation either on Facebook. Or maybe he said this in a video, or maybe I can't remember. It's a long time since I wrote this down. Or maybe when he was on Deep Drinks, he said, philosophers and biblical scholars give a reasoned defense for their claims. So therefore, they too are apologists of some sort. Everyone is an apologist. Just do your best to avoid being a bad one. Stop letting people use the word apologist as a slur. I think that might have been a tweet, actually.
Yeah, this is I've heard Eric say this sort of thing pretty frequently before. So that's it there, right? Philosophers and biblical scholars give a reasoned defense for their claims. So therefore they too are apologists of some sort. Everyone is an apologist. Just do your best to avoid being a bad one. Stop letting people use the word apologist as a slur. Well, in the first place, let's be clear about what the word means, right? Mm-hmm. Apologist is a so it is developed from the Greek word apologia, which basically means defense. So you have arrived at an idea. You have to provide a rationale for the idea that you've arrived at is the notion here. And this is just simply not how we should be doing history. It's just not. So biblical scholars I don't care about philosophers, but certainly biblical scholars. When it comes to biblical scholarship, one of the things that people like me, people like Dan McClellan, like Jennifer Bird, like Matt Monger, like Robert Cargill over at Excavator, and the dude on Religion for Breakfast, and Josh
Oh,
Bowen,
he's great.
like the Religion for Breakfast guy, yeah,
And
or
Let's
Josh
Talk
Bowen.
Religion. Oh, both. Yeah, he's
Josh,
good. He's all right. No,
really, you're a big fan of Josh Bowen? Oh,
huge
okay.
fan. Huge fan. I keep wanting to get a signed book, and they keep
I
like,
don't
let's
know.
send it, and they
I'm
never send.
I
But
I'm I can't get
uh,
rid of that guy. I just see following guys.
who's that? Who's that dude? Let's Talk Religion. He's also brilliant. He's so
Right.
brilliant. If
Oh,
you know him
and
too.
another guy, Justin Sledge from Esoterica is
Let's just
amazing.
talk about our favorite people on the internet
So,
and favorite metal
so
people.
right,
Keep going.
but so these guys, Bart Ehrman, like take your pick, like all of these. There's this array of biblical scholars who are doing their best to promote biblical scholarship. Andrew Mark Henry, thank you, Vishanti, who are doing their best to promote biblical scholarship in public spaces. That's what I think that I'm trying to do. So we get labeled as, critics or enemies of the Bible, or as atheists, or as skeptics. And inherent within that label is this idea that we are somehow against a certain thought or presentation, or we're somehow against Christianity. But what always gets missed in this discussion is that maybe not every single one of us, but I would suspect the vast majority of us didn't start doing this because we just wanted to take a dump on Christianity. That wasn't the goal from the start, right? Like, I started my university education because I loved Jesus, and because I wanted to help people who loved Jesus to know their Bibles better. That's where I started. And I know that like my good friends, Josh, well, I don't know.
Oh, that Josh Bowen guy.
Josh Bowen guy.
How do I roll my eyes?
But like, I know, Jennifer Bird, Matt Monger, Bart Ehrman. We all started in that same place. We loved the Bible. We loved Jesus. We wanted to help people understand the truth of the Bible, the truth of Christianity. So, like, on my it was like second week at university when I took my first course with Professor Peter Flint, and he informed me that Noah probably didn't exist and there was no global flood. I was absolutely devastated by this information. Like, it was just it was world changing. It was not welcome. It is not something that we went looking for. Critical scholars are critical scholars because of the evidence. Most critical scholars of the Bible started from a place of faith, of being determined to demonstrate the viability and the truth of the Bible, and in the process of that, made discoveries about the Bible that were quite different from where we started, right? Like, it just this is how I this is what frustrates me, I think, about people like Eric Manning, and this idea that we're all just doing the same thing from different sides. No, we're not. The fact of the matter is that that most critical scholars are Christians and Jews who are still, deeply committed worshiping Christians and Jews. And they have arrived at their historical conclusions because of the evidence. And that's the difference between critical scholars and apologists. Apologists do whatever they can to find workarounds of the evidence that they can't avoid. That's why Inspiring Philosophy Michael Jones made, a 1.5 hour documentary about the Exodus, which basically posits there were Semitic people who lived in Egypt. The end. Like
to water it down.
Yeah. And it's looking for loopholes, and it's looking for the most, the most remote of possibilities, right? What if the one genealogy in Luke is actually Mary's genealogy, and the other genealogy in Matthew is actually Joseph's genealogy? Our work is done. Does it say that in the text? Is it even implied? No. So I guess I don't know. I'm probably drinking too much too. But
no, that was all brilliant. The thing for me is, like, I've heard people say to me in person, "You just want to rule out the supernatural, or you'll never accept the supernatural." I'm like, and honestly, like, honest to God, Yahweh, what's the Allah, Neil deGrasse Tyson word, like all of them, right? Like, I swear, if I can put myself in. This is how I started first investigating my Christian worldview. Is I removed my Christian helmet and I tried to look at the evidence. I trained myself to look at the evidence. Not even trying not to even, like, I'm not even a male anymore. I'm not even a white man. I'm not even, like, I'm trying to remove as much as I possibly can. Like, I'm looking at it. Like, I'm training myself really hard to look at it. So if someone says to me, like, all right, let's posit also the supernatural, I can do that. I can look at the evidence and go, like, okay, what are the odds that this is, like, also supernatural, or maybe that God preserved his word or something? And, like, I do that. And it really bothers me when people say, you just want a naturalistic explanation. I'm like, I don't. I just want an explanation that works. And it seems like the naturalistic explanation works, and it seems like the supernatural one doesn't. And you have to do these mental gymnastics, and it's obvious why you don't accept the natural explanation, because you're going to church every Sunday. Your family's religious. Like, you've grown up in the tradition. It's very important to you. You have a very intact worldview, and then you get involved in these communities of apologists who all come together, and they all support each other, and they love each other, and they're like, we're going to find a way to stand up for the word of God. And you start there, and you keep learning more and more and more, and then all of a sudden you're in this, like, bizarro worldview. Like, you've seen Seinfeld, right? Like, I'm sure you've seen Seinfeld. It's like bizarro worldview with Bizarro Jerry and Bizarro George, and, like, everyone, like, nothing, like, that's the type of Christianity that's left over. It's like, this isn't Jesus. This isn't, like, what I haven't seen the documentary by Michael Jones, and again, he's a friend, but, like, are you saying that it comes down to a few Samaritans lived in Egypt? Whoa!
So yeah, right. Whoa. Like, I mean, that's basically it.
Amazing, like, Exodus story. That's incredible. Wow. Like, whoa, oh my gosh.
So yeah, it's the way we don't do history when we're exploring any other topic this way, right? Yeah. That's the big difference. Like, we don't. I mean, I just told you, Josephus talks about, a cow giving birth to a rabbit giving birth to a pig. I don't look at that and go, oh well, I don't know. I mean,
what would happen?
Josephus wrote it down. He was there. He was in Jerusalem at the time this happened. So
I'll say he was a first-hand witness. Like, he was a contemporary. Do you know? My mum, she's been watching Deep Drinks, and she said,
"Hey, Mom."
She's yeah, she's probably watching right now. She said that she can't believe that she used to believe. Like she thinks back and she's like, talking donkeys. She's like, what? I believed in talking donkeys. And she's like, this is even, or even like, I thought about it. I'm like, wait, so like the serpent in the Garden of Eden was talking, but then it's like, but they couldn't physically talk. They don't have the ability with it. Like
they can't make
the physical body couldn't talk. They don't have lips. They don't have, like, I was just like, so then all of a sudden you have to, the serpent in the Garden of Eden isn't a serpent, it's something else, and then all the Christian art is wrong, and it's like, yeah. Here's my mum. I'm here. It's great to see you.
Hey, Sylvia. So hey, man. I don't want this to get away, but you just got some mad love.
Well,
from
Dr. Cheryl Lyle. You've just given the largest super chat we've ever had on Deep Drinks podcast. Excellent show tonight. Gentlemen, I could listen to Dr. Kip all day. $100. That means the world to us, to my family, and to Deep Drinks at the moment. That means the world to us. We're on one wage. And what's the old joke that I've been saying, Kip? It's not Deep Drinks anymore. It's Shallow Drinks, because I can't afford.
It's Shallow Drinks. Yes.
I can't actually afford a lot of the drinks that my guests want. So I have to substitute.
That's David's last bottle of Japanese whiskey.
But, and also, I don't know if people watch for like the exact same drink, but Dr. Cheryl, that is super amazing. I'm going to message you after this. I really appreciate that. That's like overwhelming, a huge amount of money. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Jason Rollins also sent a $5 super chat. You guys
are never going to get through this fucking book.
And I support that. Well, thank you for the $5 super chat.
One of these days, though.
Well, I do actually want to say. So, how far are we through chapter 3? Like,
we could probably leave chapter 3 alone now. I think we could. We probably effectively put to bed. I hope everybody is clear on the idea that the manuscript evidence has to be weighed with some exceptional care. Yeah, there's piles of manuscript, but very few of them go back nearly as early as most people think that they do. They're super fragmentary, and they actually paint a picture of a developing text. I think that's all I have to say about that. Like,
yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
You have to. I want you to grab that one from what your pastor didn't tell you there, just because I want to give a shout out to Zach Miller, who is a friend of mine who runs this YouTube channel. There you go. I didn't see what he posted before, but thanks, buddy. So, but yeah, he's a good dude. He does some, so Zach is a student of biblical studies, and he has on scholars on his channel and has some pretty great interviews about various topics related to the Bible. So
we're getting a lot of shout outs today from different channels. What the pastor didn't tell you, go check out that channel. I'll be doing that.
Yeah.
I might do that right now.
And look, he wears that's a picture of him. So he dresses up like Moses in his videos, which is amazing. So yeah. So
okay,
it's good. So we are I think we are through chapter 3.
Yeah.
How, like, I'm probably, I don't know. Where do you want to go from here? And how much of this do you?
I think what we do, because it seems to be everyone. I need you to comment to tell me if I'm correct, but it seems to be that these books, these chapters, it's less about pulling apart the chapter, and it's more about where the conversation then leads to from the chapter, because these random tangents that we've been on have been really enjoyable for me, and I hope everyone else is liking it as well. Please tell me if you are liking these like kind of longer streams with Kip, where we're just kind of bantering and talking about stuff, because we could continue the series on. We could move into chapter 4 or something and can continue until we get to the ones that we don't care about.
So I'll say one thing here about what I have in my notes. Like, I think I mentioned this to you before. Like, I have, there was a lot in chapter 3 just because I'm a manuscript guy, and that's what I do. For chapters 4, 5, and 6, I have a couple of things, but not a lot. And then because I just can't, I don't know how much of this I can do. I spent a fair bit of time in chapter 10, and I, you know, and that got us through Old Testament prophecy. I don't know how much I can handle the several chapters that he's written about the resurrection of Jesus.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I guess I guess we can take it as it goes, right? So maybe
well,
if if we're going to do this again, maybe let's focus. We could probably get through like a few chapters next time.
okay. Let's
We've only managed to do one.
Oh no, and we like,
Every single episode.
why don't we do, yeah, we can do a few chapters next time maybe. And how I love that this just turned into us.
Do people want more of this?
Yeah, do people want more of this? People
do you want us to keep doing this?
People are saying that they do, and there's a lot of viewers here, so yeah.
Will David continue to get $100 super chats if I come on and talk about, or if I do this from time to time?
Okay, I think what we do. You know what I think we do? I think we just plan, because we've had longer streams than this with me and you.
Yeah,
and I was planning for this one to be longer as well. But
so,
let's just plan a longer stream, and we'll choose a really good drink, and we'll just sail
maybe a cheaper drink next time, right?
Cash and pop or $5 or whatever they call it. Yeah, we get goon wine, goon sack wine, or yeah, we can. Look, we can substitute. We don't have to drink the exact same thing. I try and do things. But yeah, so, like I'd be keen for that.
My friend Zach Miller desperately wants a folk face.
You should sell them. You'd probably get sued, but you should.
Probably would. So yeah. Yeah, sorry. You were saying I got distracted.
So type 1 in the chat if you want more of this. Pragmatic Crystal, I shot you a DM on Discord, by the way. I really want to connect with you about some stuff. 1 1 1 1 1. Yeah, so people seem to enjoy this.
People are okay with this. Okay.
I'm also going to put out a poll to see what time people like these, because this is a later stream and people seem to enjoy it.
How many people are watching?
74.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Good job, people.
That's a huge for us at the moment.
Nice. Nice.
Well, okay. Well, what we'll do is we'll wrap up the show.
Okay.
Let me just shout out your stuff real quickly.
Can I before we do this, can I just kind of say one thing to tease it, because I've been pretty excited about this. One of the things that's coming up in a future show that people can look forward to is that when David decided he wanted to do this, when we talked it through and we agreed about doing this. I don't do audiobooks very often, but I found a free version of the audiobook of this, and I was traveling at the time, so I thought, well, the best thing I could do is just download this audiobook into my phone and plug it into my car for when I'm driving. So I found like an old audiobook version, because I think my audiobook version was different than yours, right, David? I think you said
I got the Audible version, like the up to date. I think I got the updated version of the books too.
Yeah, because I think you said Lee Strobel is the reader, right?
It's up here because I was re-listening to it. I think so. Yeah, sure.
Oh, so they got the audiobook.
Yeah,
the audiobook version of mine. They hired like a professional actor, and I'm sorry, I'm so excited about this. So I threw it on in the car when I was driving, and This professional actor does voices.
On
so because they're interviews
oh,
with all these different people.
I just
And so
realized. Yeah, okay. Keep going.
what did you just realize?
I thought you were saying that it was actually like the person who is it someone acting as if they're that person.
Yes.
Okay, keep going. That's so bad.
So bad. So yes, he does. The actor does voices for all the people throughout the book, and I almost drove off the road at one point while I was listening to it because it's so hilarious. But I have prepared some clips. So we will get to those on a future episode, but only if there's so I think I conservatively set the benchmark for our mega stream last month on Super Bowl Sunday for 1 billion viewers. So if the next time we do this, if we get like 2 billion viewers,
yeah,
then
we'll play
I'll play the audio clips, for you guys.
Okay.
All right.
That sounds absolutely fantastic.
Share it.
Well,
2 billion viewers.
Let's get 2 billion. Let's get 2 billion viewers for next time.
Yep.
And also go because now 2 billion people are watching this one. Let's go over to Kit's channel and subscribe to Kit's channel where you've got this new show.
Oh yes,
Diablo Critics, and
we are excited.
I'm just there to pull these scholars in line, but it's such a good show. It's such a good show. Tell us about it, Kit.
So, my friends, Dr. Jennifer Bird, Dr. Dan McClellan, Dr. Matt Munger, and that other guy who likes to hang around with us, Dr. Josh Bowen. We are doing a once a month live show on my channel where we will review bad biblical scholarship and bad apologetics, and we will take your questions live. So we did our inaugural show on Super Bowl Sunday. I think it was fantastic. David is very graciously helping me to produce the show. He's getting up at like fucking
I got up at like 4 a.m.
4 a.m. on a Monday morning.
Yeah. Matt Munger Matt Munger is up at like, is it 9 p.m. So it's like late for him.
It's like 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock p.m. So we have stretched this across 18 time zones between Brisbane and Vancouver, Canada. And it's epic. We had so much fun. It's good. On Super Bowl Sunday. We are going to be doing it again the second Sunday of every month. So I think it's the next one will be the 10th of March on my channel. We are still planning on what we will do next. We started reviewing a video by Mike Winger, but only got like 5 minutes into it. So we will see how that goes. I'm thinking about a couple of things. One of the things we might do is just throw a poll out there to see what the people want us to talk about. But that will be coming on Sunday, the 10th of March at 11 a.m. Pacific time, is 2 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern. It's 5 a.m. if you live in Brisbane. it's like 8 o'clock if you live in Oslo. But come hang out with us. It's tons of fun. So I'm very excited about that. I've also decided that I am going to be doing more of my own live shows. I just went live, just did an impromptu live last week.
Yeah, that's right. You called it surprise. I'm live or something.
Yeah. So I'm going to be doing a few more of those. My goal right now is to go live once a week. So
Yeah, nice.
I will probably do one next week because I don't have anything. I don't have anything planned. And then the other big thing, I have a Patreon where I, provide early access to my work, to my videos on YouTube. Right now, you can see it right there. I have I did an interview over on Data Over Dogma, and they were gracious enough to provide me access for my patrons to the extended interview that we did, which is all about the history of the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls and lots of the intrigue and the espionage involved with that. It's a wild story. There's great stuff in there. But that is a patron exclusive. You can join for as little as $4. I think it's $4 American a month.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do occasional live meetups there as well for patrons. And something else that I'm working on right now, and I have started. I've not announced this publicly. This is the first time, but I am launching I'm launching a direct donation page because I'm currently writing a book on ancient Israelite religions. This is based on the course that I made for MVP courses. It's massively expanded from the course. There you go. Thank you. And updated. But my hope is to try and get the book done in the next 3 months. I'm about half finished. But I need help to get it done. So I will provide David with a link to the direct donation page for that. So if you enjoy what I do, and if you want to support my work further, there's a couple of great ways to do that. You can either join the Patreon, you can donate directly to my my GoFundMe for completing the book, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. So, but that's what's going on. One more thing. In terms of upcoming stuff, I will be on Captain Dadpool's channel. We will not be making artisan knives, but I will be on Captain Dadpool's channel on Sunday, this coming Sunday at 6:00 p.m. To talk about something that I do professionally, which is paleography. So he wanted to do a whole show with me talking about Jewish paleography, what it is, how I do it, what it tells us about the manuscripts, what and how it's useful, and all sorts of things like that. So I'm pretty excited about that. All right, I think that's it, David.
That is
that's a lot.
So much awesome content to look forward to. And of course, I'll shout out Deep Drinks just quickly. Coming up in 5 days, we have D. Murphy from the Stacey Smalls podcast being a closet atheist for 30 plus years, which is wild to me. That's going to be a very interesting story. Once again, I'm trying very hard not to learn too much about D's. I'm trying to remove the things in my memory about D, and I'm going to try and go into it fresh. And of course, we have Captain Dadpool. We have so many great guests coming up. I actually am a bit too drunk to remember them all, but we have a lot of great guests coming up, and I'm working very hard to get these cover photos done so I can do it. But if you want to support us on Patreon as well, you can join the Patreon for free and join the live streams. But then there's also paid versions as well that get you access to behind the scenes features, including behind the scenes of the documentary that I'm working on at the moment about the King James Bible and the Northbrook witch trials, which has been wild. I've got a stack of books this big, and it's just the more I look into it, the more I realize I've got to learn before I make the documentary. So, but I guess I'll be on Matters Now on March 9th.
Oh,
so
nice.
Go check out Matters Now on YouTube. But,
I don't even know what that is. What is that?
Well, let's have a look. It's a show that I'm going to be on. I know that. and they're at like 10,000 subscribers, and it's gonna. I'm going on. It's very low key apparently. It looks really awesome. And of course, they're talking about Matt Powell, who is just the sweetest of gentlemen.
That's a great. Oh, look, they have a doggy.
Whoa, oh, and I'm subscribed. Go check out the Matters Now podcast.
Yeah, they have a dog.
Something about big dogs, man. Something about dogs in general.
I have no dogs. There are no dogs in the room.
Thank you. I know. I got a beagle.
Crazy.
Thank you everyone for coming out. I really appreciate it. And join the Patreon. And if you want to become the Pope of Deep Drinks, it's going to be available very soon. You can put your company name up there or do something, but you'll be the one who blesses all. See you guys later.